Hey folks, welcome to the Triple T Thursday. For those just joining us, that's tools, tips, and talk, where we'll discuss info for the knife maker. In today's episode, we're going to continue our intermediate series and talk all about sharpening. So let's get right to it. Alright, so let's talk about sharpening. We're going to be sharpening, of course, the knife that we've been working on. I've been keeping it in this case just to make sure it's not scratched, because it's all put together. It's going to be really hard to re-coffee it, so don't get it scratched. So let's talk about the sharpening system. So I'm using the Wicked Edge Go sharpening system. That's what I'm going to show you guys, and this can be applied to any of the sharpening systems that have rods, TS Prof, the Lansky, pretty much all of those. I don't sharpen on whetstones. I know some people swear by it. I've just never learned it. I don't care to get a bunch of whetstones in practice. This system has worked for me, and I like it. So with this one, this particular one is kind of one of their lower end models, and you just have to clamp it to your table. I like it because it's portable. It comes in this carry case. It comes with varying stones. I think this came with 3 sets of stones, and the stones slide into the base here. Actually, no, I don't. They slide into the base here, so you can carry a set in there. Each stone has 2 grits, one on either side. Most of the stones that I have are the diamond stones, and they last a really, really long time, which is why I like those. It basically comes with this kind of clamping system, and then some of these guide rails, and this has some sizes, some angles across the bottom, so you can choose what angle you want to sharpen at. So I'm going to be sharpening this one at 23 degrees, and why, you might ask? It's just, some of this is just preference. If you go too steep of an angle, like you come in too much, or too narrow of an angle, however you want to think about it, it's going to give you a larger secondary bevel. And it also depends on the kind of knife you're doing. If I'm doing a chef knife and I want it to be really, really sharp, and I'm not worried about it chipping as much, then I'll do a really, really fine angle. But if I'm doing a chopper where I need the edge to be pretty stout, I'll move it out to maybe 25 or 30. To give it more of a kind of an edge like that instead of an edge like that, just to give it some more meat behind the edge. So let's talk about preparing the knife. So the one thing that these systems can do is scratch your blade. So if you're not careful. So what I like to do is tape up the blade completely. And I've even found that I wish Wicked Edge would do something here. Instead of leave these raw metal, I wish they would put some kind of felt or something in here to protect the blades. What I end up doing is I always cut a little piece of fabric. I put it on the back of the blade where I'm going to hold it in here. And then I'll take some tape and tape the whole blade. You'll see me when I'm done here. So I've taped up the blade, and you'll see what I'm going to do in the next step, but even as well, I'm going to tape up the whole handle. And the reason being is just in case you nick it with one of the bars, or which is more common, it just gets all dirty with all the grinding. So we're just going to do this. So next, I'm just going to take a razor blade and I'm going to run it down the edge, just carefully cutting the tape. Okay, make sure you leave, especially if you got a guard here, make sure you leave. I'm going to wrap this even more. Make sure you leave this, because sometimes you're going to hit that with the side here, so make sure there's enough tape around your guard. And then cut the tape on both sides, and you're good to go. Okay, so I've got this little thing here, this little insert that they provide to you, and this just lets the knife sit on something. Okay, well, and this is where you can just make sure it's level. I've replaced the screw in here, so it's a Phillips, but okay, so you do this so the top is tight, and then tighten the bottom. You can take this out now, and this will make it, this will really tighten it. So I've got this centered pretty much this way. I might have a little extra hanging off the front, which is fine. And then just tighten it. And just a note, you'll notice that I did put the, I put that cloth underneath the tape. If you put it over the tape, the tape slides, and your knife can actually slide out of the vise, so that's why it's underneath the tape. So I got these tightened down, we're all ready to go. So I'm going to start with a pretty high grit, low grit, whatever you want to think about it, but I'm starting with an 80 because there's no bevel on this whatsoever. It's not like I'm sharpening a knife here, I'm forming an edge. So I'm going to first just go down here, and I'm really just taking the tape off here. One reason to have the tape is if you accidentally scrape, it's really hard on this one, but I've done it before, where you come off and you nick this, or you basically hit this part of the blade. The tape is going to protect it, so you won't accidentally, or you shouldn't accidentally put scratches in the blade doing it this way. Okay, I've got most of the tape off. Sometimes you get a little tape on these, but all right, we're good. So now I'm going to start sharpening, and I'll generally, because there's tape on it, I'll go up like this for the most part. And then once I get a bit of an edge and I'm not worried about the tape sliding off, I'll start to go both directions. The one advantage I think of with the Wicked Edge, or this type, is that I can see the edge the entire time I'm sharpening. It's not like this. And I don't need to like flip it over. I can do both sides kind of at the same time. So I think overall it's quicker than some of the Lansky systems, but personal preference.
If you're looking for sharpeners or any knife making tools, check out Maritime Knife Supply. They have everything you need. There's a link down in the description.
I should have mentioned before, if you're doing a blade that's got a full flat grind and the bevel goes all the way to the edge, the top edge, sometimes your blade can get skewed one way or the other. So you want to make sure you look down the top of the blade and make sure that it's not tilted, because of course that'll affect you'll have more of an edge on one side than the other. This one has a flat area here, so it's pretty even. So at this point, I'm just trying to take the edge down. I mean, I can still visibly see the edge. So I know I don't have it apexed yet. It's probably here. When it gets close, this is where I'm going to start to go up only. Because what up only is going to do is it's going to start to fold over the edge ever so slightly on the one you're sharpening. So when I go this way, it's going to kind of do this. And you're going to be able to take your finger and do this, and you'll feel kind of the edge catch. And that's when you're starting to form the burr or that piece of steel that's flopping over every time you sharpen it, and that's what you want. So go until you start to feel that, and then sharpen one side kind of with a few marks, and you should feel that all the way down. Where you don't feel it, keep sharpening that area. And then take it on this side, sharpen this area, and you should feel it flip over, and you should feel it all the way down. We're going to do that on whatever our lowest grit is. We're going to do that until we feel that on both sides.
Doing the initial grit is what takes the longest. This goes for about another 10 or 15 minutes. Now I'm moving up to the 200, 400 grit stones, starting at 200 grit, and we'll go in the opposite direction. And now onto the 800, 1000 grit stones. And now the last of the diamond stones. These are 1500, 2200.
Okay, so that was the 1500 and 2200 stones. So now I'm moving on to my final stones, which are actually ceramic stones, and these are for polishing. So I recently got these, well, not recently, I got them last year at Blade, and I really like these because they give a nice silver polish on the edge, and you don't see any kind of scratches on the edge. It starts at a 1.4 micron and then a 0.9 micron. So, sorry, 0.6 micron. So, and I'm going to go in the same direction with these. The great thing about these stones is if you see a spot that you're not sure, if you just go back and forth, it'll either shine up or you'll see a scratch and you know you have to go back down. And I'm sure you're not picking it up on the camera, but I can actually see a little razor edge, super thin, that every time I sharpen one side, it kind of folds back and forth. It's like a little thin piece of foil on the very top. So we're done right now. I've still got that edge, and if I'm trying to do this with my nail, it feels a little rough. That's because of that edge. Now we need to take that off, and that's where our strop comes in. I don't know if you can see that edge, but it looks nice and shiny. So now I'm just going to take that off by going about the same angle, maybe a tiny bit steeper on this. And this is just a piece of leather. This happens to have green compound on one side and white on the other, so I'm just going to use the green. You don't need a lot of pressure here. You're basically just polishing the edge, and it'll take that burr off. Okay, so now to test that you've done that, what I like to do is take my fingernail and just, you shouldn't feel any resistance. I can feel a little bit here. It's dragging a little bit, so I didn't get the very tip there, which is pretty normal. Okay, that's pretty good. So now I'm going to take all the tape off. And it's important to make sure that, the blade is nice and clean. Oh yeah, it's sharp. So now we're going to check our sharpness, and I like to use this U-line book, but because it's got really, really thin, almost like newsprint. And this is way better than using like a piece of stock printer paper or something like that, because that is always going to be thicker and much easier to cut. I don't care how finely it cuts. What I'm looking for are any places where it snags, because that usually means I haven't stropped it enough. So I'm going to take great care to just make sure that it's not catching in any places. Yeah, so that's super smooth. That cut, but it... And trust me, if you can do it with something like this or with newsprint, you can definitely do it with a regular piece of paper. And the other thing is, if you can fold this and make a loop on this stuff, it's really hard. And there it goes. All right, so that's definitely sharp. There we go, folks. I'll come in a little bit and show you guys, hopefully you'll see it, and how shiny that edge is. Okay, and it still needs to be just washed with acetone, but that's sharp. Thanks for joining me today on how I do sharpening. There's lots of different ways. Find one that works for you and use that. Thanks, guys. See you on the next one.